than they're actually spending right now. The problem is, they're under no pressure to do it. No pressure whatsoever. How do I know this? Major League Baseball just wrapped up its latest collective bargaining agreement negotiations, ratified a deal with the players. Nice, peaceful, everything's great. The only problem is they're still playing an unfair game. That was the title of Michael Lewis's Moneyball, The Art of Winning an Unfair Game. It was the subtitle of his book, Moneyball. It's still an unfair game. You still have the Yankees with $200 million. You have the Mariners at $94 million. You have the Rays down at $44 million in payroll. But nobody wants to fix this in baseball. Why not? How come they didn't have a labor dispute like the NBA just had? How come they didn't have a near strike like the National Football League almost had, a near lockout this past year? Because nobody in Major League Baseball is unhappy with the status quo. Whether you're the richest of the rich, the New York Yankees, or the poorest of the poor, which are the Rays, or allegedly the Pittsburgh Pirates, all of them like this system very much the way it is. They are all doing very well financially. The problem is, fans, by and large, don't realize this. And I think a lot of that has to do with what I just talked about. The 9 years that have passed since Moneyball has spawned a generation of fans, not only fans, but fan bloggers, who now have access to the internet and can spread their ideas around the internet the way mainstream newspapers used to do, or the way radio and television used to do it. And these ideas, by and large, are the Moneyball ideas of being cost-effective. For them, the heroes of the game are guys like Billy Beane, the general manager of Oakland, guys like Andrew Friedman, the general manager of Tampa Bay, because they know how to be cost-effective. They get the best bang for their buck. Now, they don't win the World Series, which is what most fans of baseball used to care about, but they're cost-effective, and so they're made into heroes on the internet. The guys who aren't heroes are guys like Kenny Williams of the Chicago White Sox, guys like Brian Sabean of the San Francisco Giants, who are seen by and large to be wasteful. They throw big money at free agent players, and not all of those contracts work out. So they're seen to be very fast and loose with their money, and they are hated by fans on the internet. Now, the one problem is, both those men I just mentioned have won a World Series in the last 6 years. Both of those men continue to hold on to their jobs for 10 plus years in baseball, much to the chagrin of baseball fans who can't figure out why. The reason why is they've won a World Series, and the value of their franchises during their tenure has more than doubled because they actually win at baseball. And this is where the disconnect occurs. There is such a preoccupation right now with baseball fans towards being cost-effective and towards being like Billy Beane was in Moneyball, that they're missing largely the forest for the trees. And the forest in this case is the fact that Major League Baseball teams are sitting on a gold mine of potential revenue. They have the money to throw around, by and large. Why do they have it? Because of publicly financed stadiums like the one we have right here in Seattle at Safeco Field. When you invest in a baseball team, most owners investing in teams expect to get taxpayers to pay for their stadiums. And almost always they do. Here in Seattle, taxpayers, I believe, I wasn't living here at the time, but I believe they actually rejected being taxed for a new stadium, but they went ahead and built it anyway.
Well, yes, they did.
Yeah, I believe they did. So I don't want to, I'm just paraphrasing right now. I'm trying to get through these in 20 minutes.
So you've heard.
But anyway, they got their stadium, and what happens when you get that stadium is the value of your franchise shoots up. And to make a long story short, the Mariners owners in 1992 paid $100 million for their stake in the baseball team. Since then, they've spent another $112 million of their own money, basically subsidizing losses at the Kingdome for years, and then to put up their part of the Safeco Field financing, which was under $100 million. So in total, the owners have put in $212 million. Now, last couple of weeks I've been covering the divorce trial of Chris Larson, who's a minority owner of the Mariners. Biggest minority owner they have, former Microsoft executive. He owns 30.6% of the Mariners. The rest is owned by a billionaire in Japan who's never been to the United States. But Chris Larson, in that divorce trial, the judge had to put a value on the franchise. And the judge had two experts come in, one from Larson's side, whose prime goal would be to understate the value because it would result in him having to pay, in theory, less of a share in the divorce case to his wife. And then his wife's expert was brought in, both sports valuation experts. And the wife's expert, it would be in their best interest to overstate it in order to get a bigger settlement. In theory, I don't know what their motivations are because I'm not inside their minds. But one evaluation came back, the low end of the evaluation came back at $551 million, and the high end came back at $750 million in franchise value. In the end, the judge, taking all the information at his disposal, and don't forget, they had inside access to documents that normally people don't have, the judge put the value of the team at $641 million. And that means that of their initial $212 million investment in the team, Mariners owners now see their total team value worth $641 million. That's a big jump. Now people will say over 20 years that's not much. If you've made a good stock market investment, you could easily beat that. And yeah, that's fine and good. The problem is you can't compare buying a baseball team to buying a stock market investment. Two reasons. Number one, you get great tax advantage when you buy a baseball team. Primarily in the first few years of ownership, first 5 years I believe it is, you can actually write off player payroll, what you spend on players, as a depreciating asset to your taxes and use that against other income that you bring in from other sources. None of these baseball owners are getting into baseball as a prime means of support. They all have lots of money, or they wouldn't even be let in the door by Major League Baseball. They were all independently wealthy people. So they have money coming in from other sources. It's a great tax write-off for that. You don't get that when you buy certain stock market investments. You don't get to write off human beings as a depreciating asset. It's a very exclusive tax break that sports teams get. Number two, the prime investment that you're making in a stock investment isn't being financed by taxpayers around you. Normally, it's not. But it is in the case of baseball. What made the Mariners leap from a 200 and whatever million dollar team that the money was put into to a $641 million team was the fact that taxpayers financed the majority, the overwhelming majority of Safeco Field. And Safeco Field is a license to print money because the teams get access to the revenues, the concessions, the parking that stadium generates, and the luxury suites, and everything else that comes with a new stadium. So, this is going on. The Mariners owners aren't bad people. You know, they try to present themselves as riding in on a horse like a white knight to save baseball in Seattle. A lot of people do that around the game. A lot of owners do this. But the problem is, then they start asking for public money very soon after that. They start asking for the public stadiums, and if they don't get it right away, they start threatening to pull out. So I don't know about the civic pride part of it, and the Mariners owners did just that. In the mid-90s, when negotiations on a new stadium weren't doing very well, they started making noise about pulling out their stakes and leaving. And so, you know, it's one thing to sell yourself as a white knight, but if the white knight tries to go back on it a few years later, you have to take it with a grain of salt. A lot of baseball owners get in this for ego, they get in this for pride, for money, for a lot of things that don't have a lot to do with being civically responsible. Where are the Mariners owners in all this? Probably somewhere in between. They're not bad people, but this goes on all over baseball, and it's going on right now, where teams are sitting on way more money than anybody could even imagine because of public stadiums, and now the new cash cow, one that the Mariners are going to have presented to them in a few years, is to have a stake, an ownership stake, or a new television deal with a regional sports network. And we've seen it happen now in Los Angeles with the Los Angeles Angels. They just signed Albert Pujols to a $250 million contract, largely because they're getting a $3 billion television deal that they are going to make him the marketing centerpiece of. Now, very quickly, back to the whole topic that I'm getting into today. When they first announced the Pujols deal, fans were outraged. Fans were horrified. They said, the Angels will never afford that. They just signed their own death warrant. They're going to go out of business in a few years. Mariners fans on my blog were laughing, saying, well, all we have to do now is wait 3 more years and we're going to bankrupt the Angels and then we'll take over the American League West. But what those fans don't understand is that they're not smarter than everybody else out there, especially not billionaire baseball owners. Not everybody out there with money is foolish, believe it or not. Some of them actually have smarts to go out and make their money. And within 24 hours, they had announced their TV deal, and everybody started scratching their heads trying to figure out, how does this fit into being cost effective? It doesn't. The teams that are